Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase.
Hakuna Matata. Ain't no passing craze.
It means no worries for the rest of your days.
It's a problem-free philosophy.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata?
Well, Hakuna Matata is a phrase that we've grown to love from the movie The Lion King. It's now at the center of a debate sparked by a move by Walt Disney to trademark the phrase. Activists are against this. They say trademarking the phrase is akin to exploiting African culture. An online petition against the trademark has garnered over 50,000 signatures. It urges Walt Disney to drop the trademark before the release of The Lion King remake in 2019. Joining us in studio to talk more about this are Wits Anthropologists, Professor David Coplan and Robert Thornton. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.
What do you make of this debate, around Hakuna Matata, this debacle that is now unfolding?
Well, first of all, Hakuna Matata is one way of... Swahili is a interesting language, complex language. It's one of the older languages to have been written in Africa. It's written in Arabic script from the 14th, 15th century. But it's not strictly an African language. It's an Indian Ocean language that came about as a result of trade in the Indian Ocean and across the African continent. So there's a phrase in Swahili, or a kind of a joke in Swahili, Kiswahili kilizaliwa kwanguja, which means it was born in Zanzibar.
Okay.
And then it moved, the rest of the phrases, it moved to Tanzania, or it moved to the continent where it got cleaned up. It went to Kenya where it became dirty. It got sick in Uganda and it died in the Congo. And that's it's a kind of joke in Swahili.
What an interesting analogy.
So it extends right across the continent, and it contains a lot of Arabic. It grew up in the Indian Ocean. It contains Indian, Portuguese, English. So it's a trade language which has become embedded in Africa. And Hakuna Matata, as such, really, I would say this is an international phrase because Swahili is an international language.
And do you think that it was then wrong for Walt Disney to trademark it?
Well, on the trademark issue specifically,
yes.
Of course, we have the same phrase in Sesotho, Hakuna Matata, which we use all the time. They didn't actually trademark the entire phrase for everywhere, forever. It's the use of Hakuna Matata in relation to Disney products. And in fact, we're kind of late on the debate because this was trademarked in 2013 for the earlier Disney products that bear the Lion King association. And the idea is that people who were doing what we call Fong Kong, it's really a Fong Kong problem, T-shirts with Simba Hakuna Matata or Pumbaa or something, they were trying to
curb that.
Yeah, to curb that, which of course doesn't work because you go to Kenya and buy yourself a Hakuna Matata T-shirt. But the idea, I think they were worried about maybe larger markets. So they don't own the rights to Hakuna Matata as a phrase, only insofar as it relates to what they see as the Fong Kong, if you will, a rip-off or a violation of their a product visibility and the use of it. And yes, it raises people's hackles, but that's the way the intellectual property regime does work. Disney is a rich and powerful company, and the rich and powerful get to set up these regimes. So, you could. There are more questions about the justice of that whole intellectual property business. Everything from the names of French wine to you name it, that could really be questioned. But in this case, and Disney, people have said, well, Disney, you should have thought about your market, because whether or not you actually have this legal right to this freedom, you'll offend people in East and Southern Africa, but Disney doesn't care about that because that market's too small.
And do you think that the activists stand a chance? I mean, he's mentioning something very critical here, the fact that, this is a huge company with loads and loads of money. So do the activists then stand a chance?
It's hard to say, really. Activists against the global capitalist order have relatively little chance, and perhaps on one issue. But here I think it's kind of the wrong issue, because Hakuna Matata is not even kind of deep Swahili. It's kitchen Swahili, or a kind of regional lingua franca Swahili. So most Swahili speakers wouldn't use that phrase. Now, as copywriting, or taking culture and making it intellectual property, I don't really like that idea any more than I like copywriting people's genes. But that's the intellectual property regime as it exists, and we as professors, you as a broadcasting company, do the same thing.
Well, this latest, episode of this debacle has actually not only caught the attention of activists, but there's also, quite a lot of social media stir that this has caused. And I just ask that if we can just have a look at some of those tweets, just to see what people have been saying. And as Destru was saying, Hakuna Matata should not be trademarked by Disney, because it's an original export of our Kenyan culture to the world. Disney trademarking, it shows a lack of respect to our African culture. We are the ones who can even say it better, and still they want to have legal rights on our words. While Shadrach Kimutai says, I speak Swahili, and the phrase Hakuna Matata is ours, and we will use it the way we see fit, be it in T-shirts, films, literature, sky painting, graffiti, etc. Disney Studios can't do anything about it. On your face at Walt Disney Studios. And well, is that banana nana? All right, let me get this straight. This movie has been out for near 25 years, with Hakuna Matata being a major phrase, making the movie what it is. And you all choose now to talk about appropriation? And Seb Elson says, utterly ridiculous and pointless debate on at LBC about Disney copywriting Hakuna Matata. Get over it, get a life, and let's concentrate on some of the important issues going on. Get over it, get a life. Is it that simple?
Well, in the sense that, Disney's legal position will carry on. The only, it's a popular perception. If they cared about what we think, then perhaps they might say, well, let's finesse this and do this, that, and the other.
Or even maybe giving us a call to say, what do you think? If,
it's kind of good publicity for them, I suppose, because as we say in America, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So the fact that people even talk about the phrase and the issue and so on, more people would be aware that the Disney thing is coming back for a second time.
Yes.
Because to tell you the truth, I wasn't that much aware of the remake until this popped up in the New York Times.
Oh, you didn't know about the remake?
Well, I vaguely. I know there's a Lion King somewhere. There's a Broadway show, and it's kind of out there. And then I saw in the Times, oh, can they do this? And now I'm aware that it's a thing.
Maybe it's because I'm a Lion King fan, and also a fan of, one of South Africa's very talented actors who's going to be in there, Bob John Khan. That's how I got to know that it's coming back. But I was reading an article which then says this has basically arisen calls for African governments to do more to protect heritage and culture.
Yeah, they
Would you
won't.
agree?
They won't.
Well, I would agree, but I think exposing it to the world is the most important thing that can be done. I mean, if we're going to say Hakuna Matata, we don't like that, then what about safari? What about boma? What about zombie? All of these words are from African languages, and Swahili in particular. So if we're going to complain about Hakuna Matata, then we need to get rid of safari. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Not at all.
What's important, I think...
Has somebody copyrighted safari?
No. Well maybe. They probably have somewhere.
I think we need to do some digging there.
But I think the value here is making Kiswahili available to the world. And Lion King does that. The names of the characters are also Swahili words, Pumbaa and Simba, things like that.
And they caught them last time with the Mbube song. You know, A Lion Sleeps Tonight. They tried to get them to pay off for decades until there was a Disney South Africa that could be sued in this country for the royalties for the original composer, and they won that one. So it can be done by the activists. They got a few $1 million out of Disney for appropriating Solomon Linda's Mbube song as the original of Lion Sleeps Tonight. When that case had gone on for a quarter of a century, I don't know, since 1961.
Sheesh. And when you look at such then, Prof, I mean, you then get a couple of millions out of it and that's it. But is it really enough? Does it really translate to something tangible except the money?
Well, for the family of Solomon Linda that got several $1 million, that's something. I mean, that's what are you going to do? Pay Africa? In any case, the governments are very, very reluctant to get involved in this because they do so much of it themselves. Appropriation is a multi-directional process. And so, I mean, Africa, we appropriate all sorts of things from everywhere. And I suppose we're the underdogs, so we're the ones who always say, taking our stuff. But you have to go through the legal regime. South Africa honors copyright. So when we violate it, it's a big thing as well. And then we complain that we can't afford to pay for these copyrights and to do these things, but we have to.
I wish we had more time to talk about this, but I'm hoping to have you back in studio at some point to talk about appropriation because this is really a huge issue. Thank you so much. Those were Wits Anthropologists, Professor David Coplan and Robert Thornton. Up next, we